House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries of the great state of New York. Leader Jeffries, thank you for coming to the weekend. So votes have been canceled for Tuesday through Friday. Speaker Johnson is not bringing the House back to order, not having Republicans come back to town. Is he making a tactical mistake by keeping Republicans out of the House? Wouldn't it put pressure on you and the Democratic caucus if they were in Washington and putting the screws to you guys to come to the table and either negotiate or push you to give him the votes, give Republicans the votes they need to get that CR over the finish line?
Well, the pressure continues to be on Republicans because this is a Trump Republican shutdown. And Democrats from the very beginning have made clear that we will sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, including on Capitol Hill, or go back to the White House in order to reopen the government, in order to enact a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, and to address the Republican health care crisis that is devastating people from all across the country. House Republicans canceled votes last week, canceled votes this week, and now they've canceled votes next week. They're running scared. They don't know what to do. They're unwilling to address the crisis that they've created, largest cut to Medicaid in American history, hospitals, nursing homes, community-based health centers all across the country closing because of what Republicans did in their one big ugly bill. And now they are refusing to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which means tens of millions of Americans are going to experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles, paying thousands of dollars per year more for their health insurance, which they will not be able to afford.
Leader Jeffries, just to follow up, a minute ago you said, you guys are there ready to meet anytime, anywhere. You're willing to go back to the White House. You and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer did go to the White House with Johnson and the Senate Majority Leader Thune to meet with the president. I'm just wondering, when you were in that meeting, did you get the sense that President Trump was eager to or would make a deal with you when it comes to at least extending the Obamacare subsidies?
Initially, there was an acknowledgement that something needed to happen with respect to addressing the health care of the American people. Now, Republicans didn't accept the blame for the crisis that they have visited on everyday Americans, and we were very clear. This is a Republican-created crisis, but there was some acknowledgement that there was a need to deal with the issue around the Affordable Care Act tax credits in some way, shape, or form. Now, the Republicans in that meeting suggested that they had all the time in the world to do something and that they didn't need to act now. And our view was that open enrollment starts on November 1st, and notices are going out right now to people all across the country, indicating that their health insurance costs are about to skyrocket in ways that will make things unaffordable for them to be able to even go see a doctor when they need one for themselves, their children, and their family. That's why our position has been clear from the very beginning, House and Senate Democrats holding strong, that we need to address this Republican health care crisis, and we need to do it with the fierce urgency of now.
Leader Jeffries, I want to ask you about a refrain that we have heard from Republicans over these past few weeks, that the premiums and that the premiums go to people who are making between $130,000 and $600,000, and that at the end of the day, that $600K is just too high of a number. Now, look, I have heard from people who are worried and have already heard from their insurance companies about who make very minimal income and are worried about losing their health care. But what about those families who are making $600,000? I mean, do you agree with some of these Republicans that that max should come down a little bit? Is this a handout to insurance companies?
Well, that's a stone cold lie that Republicans have been telling, and it's belied by the facts. 93% of the people who benefit from the Affordable Care Act tax credits make $63,000 or less, right? Those are working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans. For instance, a couple that makes about $88,000 per year and currently receives Affordable Care Act tax credits, their health insurance is $8,000 a year. That's already too high, but they can at least afford it barely as a result of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. If they go away, those tax credits, that same couple, which makes $88,000 a year, would have to pay $24,000 for health insurance. They can't afford that. That will medically bankrupt them. Those are the type of people who we are working hard to protect their health care.
But, Leader, that might be the average, but that doesn't mean that people who make up to $600,000 a year, that those families who make that kind of money aren't eligible to receive these premiums.
No, it's not the average. It's the overwhelming majority. When you're talking about 93% of the people,
but do you think that do you think Democrats could still negotiate
majority
to potentially come down on that maximum?
Well, what we've said is that we're open to evaluate anything that is presented in good faith in terms of adjustments that may be proposed potentially that come out of the Senate in a bipartisan way. The challenge that we have in the House is that Mike Johnson has basically made clear we have no interest in doing anything about the health care of the American people. In fact, in that White House meeting, he said that health care is extraneous. No, health care is not extraneous, I pointed out in that White House meeting. It's central to the well-being of everyday Americans. That's why Democrats have raised it as an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, so central that even Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is out there saying something needs to be done about this. But, you know, Congressman, speaking of good faith, one of the other sticking points that you and other Democrats have made in all of this, healthcare being issue bold number one, but a secondary issue is rescissions and how that is still on the table. Yesterday, Semaphore reported about a call that was done between the House Freedom Caucus with the press. And I want to read this. On this press call with the House Freedom Caucus, Johnson tells reporters, quote, "We worked on rescissions, and there'll be more of that we expect in the days ahead." Leader Jeffries, how can you negotiate with anyone who might agree with you on something on Monday, and then by Monday afternoon, once it's all firm and signed and official, it gives the White House the ability to snatch it all back? Is that good faith?
It's not good faith at all. And this is part of the challenge as well that we confront at this moment. Now, we've said we'll sit down and try to find a bipartisan path forward to reach a spending agreement that actually improves the quality of life for the American people. But part of that means that there's got to be enforceability once an agreement is reached, that it is actually followed by the administration, by the White House, and by the Congress. And that's why in the continuing resolution that was introduced by Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee in the House, and her partner, Senator Patty Murray, it also includes language to make sure that if we agree upon how taxpayer dollars should be spent to make life better for the American people, then those taxpayer dollars should be spent in that way.
Leader Jeffries, one more question before we have to let you go. New York State Attorney General Letitia James indicted indicted on bank fraud charges. Just your reaction to that, and whether this indictment will successfully lead to the prosecution of the state's chief law enforcement officer.
Well, Attorney General Tish James, who I've known for more than 20 years, is an incredible public servant. She's strong, she's brilliant, she's talented, she's hardworking, and she's got great integrity. This indictment is not worth the paper that it is written on. It's a malicious prosecution, and I believe that it's going to be dismissed in short order once this case is actually in a court of law. And what this also illustrates is that Donald Trump has spent more time on this revenge tour than on actually driving down the high cost of living that he's making worse here in the country. He promised to lower costs on day one. Costs aren't going down, they're going up. That's why Democrats are fighting to lower the high cost of living in terms of health care or groceries or housing and electricity bills. But instead, Donald Trump is focused on the wrong things. It's chaos, it's confusion, it's crisis, it's corruption all day, every day. And that's why the American people know that under Trump and Republican policies, the country is moving in the wrong direction.
Leader Jeffries, we're going to have to.
ICE says its agents use a, quote, minimum amount of force when making arrests. But every day, new videos pop up online which seem to indicate something else. Personally, my social media feed now is just a stream of brutal ICE interactions. Agents caught on video being both verbally and physically aggressive with the people they're detaining and with bystanders, all while many of them hide behind masks and plain clothes. These tactics appear brutal in nature, alarmingly so, and the presence of a rolling camera doesn't actually seem to deter any of it. Many of the videos are difficult to watch, but we do feel that it's important for all of us together to bear witness to what's happening to human beings on the streets of America. On Wednesday, this video was taken outside of an elementary school in Chicago. It shows a group of masked ICE officers trying to pull a woman out of her car. Eyewitnesses say the woman was in line for afternoon school pickup at the time of the incident.
Wait, you guys came to the school and to do this?
Do you have a warrant? They haven't asked for a warrant. My name is Jocelyn from Cicero. They don't have a warrant. They didn't ask for one. They forcefully opened the door of the truck. It was locked. It was locked.
You're being recorded. There's don't get it closer from here, right? Like, cool. Just stay back, please. You're being arrested for
Yeah, but you guys came to the school?
They forced us out of the car. They forced us out of the car. They were following us.
Last week, agents in that white SUV were filmed in broad daylight throwing a canister of tear gas onto a pedestrian street near a middle school. You can see cars were seemingly blocking the unmarked vehicle, which was reportedly headed for a local grocery store. A masked agent rolled down his window and threw the tear gas, causing bystanders to disperse. In Maryland, 2 ICE officers chased a man into a busy intersection and then tackled him. You can hear the man screaming, "Ayuda, help me," during the struggle. And an agent dropped his handgun and then appears to point it at bystanders.
Ayuda! Hey, look at me! Ayuda! Right there! Ayúdame! They're trying to kill me! Ayúdame! Ayúdame! That's not a people! Where's paper? Paper! You trying to kill me? Hay algo médico! Hay algo médico!
Put the gun down. Put the gun down. Put the gun down.
The Department of Homeland Security says the man being arrested in the video was resisting. On Friday in Chicago, a journalist by the name of Debbie Brockman was forced to the ground and cuffed by 3 big federal agents while she was out reporting. Watch this.
What's your name?
Debbie Brockman, I work for WGN. Let them know.
I got you. Yep. Debbie Browning?
Brockman.
Brockman, WGN. Do you guys want to share your names too, or I'm just going to cover your face?
DHS says Brockman was arrested for allegedly assaulting a federal agent. WGN-TV, Brockman's employer, says she was not charged with any crimes and was ultimately released. ICE has responded to criticism about its operation, saying, quote, anyone who actively obstructs law enforcement in the performance of their sworn duties, including U.S. citizens, will, of course, face consequences which include arrest, end quote. All this is happening in America, whether you open your eyes to it or not. Joining me now is Radley Balko, longtime journalist and author with a focus on criminal justice and civil liberties. Balko's the author of The Watch on Substack and the book Rise of the Warrior Cop, the Militarization of America's Police Forces. Hey, Radley, I don't even know what the question is. Like, I just don't know. I've been watching these videos and they strike me as remarkable. In almost no instance, and I don't know whether people are doing illegal things or legal things, I don't know what degree they are resisting arrest, but the amount of violence in this is remarkable. Shooting the priest in the head and the 6 guys on one small person. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're watching is the kind of key principles and pillars that we've always cited or referred to as, you know, the key principles that make us a free society, that differentiate us from authoritarian states. We're watching those pillars topple really with astonishing speed. I mean, one of the founding principles of this country, I mean, it's the reason why we have the Third and Fourth and Second Amendments, is the idea that we don't deploy the military for routine domestic policing. Like, this is something that's only done in the rarest of circumstances. Trump's doing it on a whim, right? He's wants to do in Portland because he saw some 5-year-old footage, on cable news. We distinguish ourselves from authoritarian states by saying we don't have secret police in this country, right? Our police are accountable. They have name tags. They have badge numbers. That's out the window now. The idea that we don't arrest or punish people for expressing or exercising their First Amendment rights. Well, we've seen immigrants green card holders be arrested for writing op-eds. We just saw a journalist deported to El Salvador for reporting on ICE raids. That was cited in court documents as the reason why he was a threat to the public and needed to be deported. The list goes on and on. I mean, we always used to make fun of, when I was growing up, we would sort of poke fun at Eastern Bloc countries with the phrase, your papers, please, right? Like in our country, you don't have to prove that you're here legally. You don't have to prove your citizenship every time you leave your home. Well, literally, we've seen ICE agents detain people and demand their papers, demand that they prove their citizenship. So it's you're right. I mean, it's just sort of hard to find words to describe just how quickly these kinds of pillars of a free society are being toppled.
And we're going to talk more tomorrow about what you do if you're confronted by ICE. But you're absolutely right. What we see so many videos of people being asked to prove their citizenship, and the officers saying, "Well, if you're a citizen, we'll let you go. We're detaining you, and then we'll let you go." It's like this. It's this randomness, right? This concept of having a reason to actually arrest someone or find them seems to be fading away.
Well, they're also just making things up. I mean, they've claimed that it's illegal to dox ICE agents, to post their identities online or their photos online. That isn't illegal. I mean, it's illegal to post threats to them, and I certainly wouldn't recommend anyone do that. But this idea that, like, because you work for ICE, you're allowed to, visit this violence on people who are here, whether they're here legally or not. And you get to do that without ever being held accountable for it, whether it's sort of legally or just in a sense of public shaming. I mean, there's no law that protects ICE agents from being identified publicly, particularly when they commit abuse against people.
You and I have been talking for a long time, and I remember after Ferguson, there was a real movement to have people carry cameras, and not everybody's phone had a camera at the time, or use their phones to record interactions with officials. Then it happened with George Floyd. Like, it was all recorded, and they still killed him on camera. And now the recording almost seems secondary. It's not changing behavior. Everybody seems to know they're being recorded, and it doesn't seem to have an impact on stopping the behavior.
Well, I mean, in some cases, it encourages it, right? I mean, ICE, there's a striking video the other day where a bunch of ICE agents chased a guy into a building, and then out of the unmarked car came another, presumably ICE employee, carrying his own camera, recording it, right? They want to record this stuff and put it online because their base eats it up. I do still think, it's important. I think the fact that we all have a camera in our pockets and we have instant access to share these videos with the world is a extremely powerful tool. It's really sort of unprecedented in the history, really, of government, right? The fact that this stuff can be shared instantly. And I do think these videos are having an effect. I mean, if you look at polling, the public approval of how Trump is handling immigration, of the amount of force that ICE is using to arrest and detain people, the public's turning against that. And I think these videos are a big reason why.
And I think it's important to understand, you may have supported the idea that Donald Trump thinks that there are too many undocumented immigrants in the United States and that they need to go through a process or whatever the case is. This is the visiting of the violence on people. We don't talk about whether they're citizens or not. It's just the fact that we use this kind of force, this kind of intimidation, this kind of violence. That's the part that's shocking me. If these people that you're arresting are undocumented and you believe something needs to happen, it doesn't require this level of force. Like, it doesn't require rappelling down a building in Chicago and coming down from a helicopter.
Yeah, and I think they've miscalculated here. I mean, I think they because they primarily listen to their base and their sort of very online, most hardcore supporters. I mean, those people get glee from those images and videos, right? They love it. They love to see violence and pain inflicted on people that they think are, don't belong here and that are subhuman, frankly. I mean, that's how they're described in MAGA circles, the people that are on the receiving end of this violence. But I think they miscalculated. I don't think the majority of the public thinks that. I think the majority of the public thinks it's abhorrent to arrest parents when they come to try to pick up their children from school. I think most of the public, thinks it's abhorrent to arrest and detain and deport, a father who's raised 3 sons who have all served their country in the Marines. One of the really heartbreaking cases I saw was a woman from Nicaragua who came here. She was 8 or 9, graduated with honors from high school, had just gotten a scholarship to nursing school, and was arrested and detained because, she was undocumented. They raided her house thinking somebody else who lived there. He didn't, but they then did an immigration check and found out she was here illegally. She was then held for 6 months. And ended up self-deporting because the conditions were so inhumane and she wasn't given access to her medicine. We have a shortage of nurses in this country, right? This woman was going into public service. She wanted to help people. She had no criminal record. She graduated from high school with honors. Like, that is the American story. That's the immigrant story. And instead, she was held in conditions that were so inhumane that she agreed to leave the country on her own. That is not registering with people. That is not what the vast majority of the country wants when they talk about, the fact that they want stronger borders, they want immigration laws enforced. They want dangerous people deported. Right. They want people who have criminal records or have a history of committing violence against other people. They don't want people who who are coming here to live their lives, to better their lives, and to serve the public and serve the community.
Radley, good to have you here. Thank you, my friend, as always. Radley Balko is the author of The Watch on Substack and the book Rise of the Warrior Cop, The Militarization of America.
That a university professor and his family have had to flee the country. This week, Rutgers University historian Mark Bray fled to Spain after he says his family received a torrent of death threats after President Trump characterized the left-wing anti-fascist movement as a domestic terrorist organization. And the Rutgers chapter of right-wing student organization Turning Point USA launched a petition for his removal. Now, to be clear, Bray says he is not a part of Antifa and that his association is solely as an academic who's studied it. And Antifa is not, by the way, an actual organization with founders or leadership. It's a loose, decentralized term for a movement, but it's increasingly being used by the right as a label for a wide range of left-leaning causes, nonprofits, and protesters. Joining us now is Rutgers history professor Mark Bray. He's also the author of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. Professor Bray, thank you for making time for us. First, how are you and your family? You just moved to Spain. Walk us through what led you to move and to get to this point.
Right. Well, as you said, following Trump's executive order declaring Antifa a terrorist organization, which you gave me a great lead up in terms of how that is completely ridiculous, I received a wave of death threats. Pushed on by a number of right-wing provocateurs online, pushed on by Turning Point USA at my campus, pushed on by Fox News. It led to the point where my address was posted on X, and I felt unsafe in my home and increasingly unsafe in the country. When I tried to leave the country on Wednesday, my reservation was mysteriously canceled at the last second. I don't know exactly what happened with that, but it was awfully fishy. And then I was stopped, searched, and interrogated by federal agents as I made my way out of the country on Thursday, despite facing no charges for any crimes whatsoever. As you said, I'm an investigator. I'm a dad. I'm just trying to live my life. I'm not even writing about anti-fascism anymore. This is about a book I wrote 8 years ago. So it really shows, I think, the kind of authoritarian creep going on with the Trump administration.
Given your expertise, Professor, can you tell us what Antifa is, what it's not? I mean, where did it originate from? Why has this become the obsession of the right? And honestly, in a very kind of simple way, why is it bad to be anti-fascist? Why is that now being used as a label? In some ways, don't we all want to be opposed to fascism?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Fascism is bad. Being anti-fascist is good. as far as your specific question, Antifa is originally an abbreviation from Germany that goes back to the early 20th century, opposition to Hitler. Antifa is a loose term for anti-fascist groups that bring together different kinds of leftists and radicals and anti-fascists in coalition to oppose the far right through a variety of different tactics. We saw it, of course, in the U.S. most famously with Charlottesville. But in a sense, as you point out, this really has nothing to do with Antifa. They haven't been in the news for 5 years since, of course, Trump tried to blame the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020 and all of the kind of social upheaval we saw then on Antifa. It's about creating a boogeyman term to demonize not only self-described leftists, but liberals, protesters, anyone who the Trump administration deems as an enemy. The authoritarian fascist playbook in history is pretty clear that you can't simply demonize people without creating this loose framework for incriminating anyone that you want to. And that's why, you know, it's no surprise that we've seen Republican politicians calling the upcoming No King's Day protest a kind of gathering of what they refer to as the pro-Hamas crowd in an effort to demonize Palestine solidarity protesters, Antifa, Marxists. It's a catch-all and really has nothing to do with anti-fascism so much as demonizing protests and equating with terrorism.
So, Professor, one of the phrases that the far-right activists who have really honed in on you, it's in the introduction to your book, and you say a call to arms, and they use that as saying, like, oh, this is rhetoric that is inciting violence. Now, frankly, it's a figure of speech. I think that we've gotten way snowflakey in policing what, you know, phrases that are commonly used and manipulating it for our own partisan political purposes. But if you went back and rewrote your introduction, would you still use that phrase?
Yeah, it means that we need to organize against fascism. Right. And so my book is a history book. I come at it as a scholar. I interviewed more than 60 anti-fascists from 17 different countries. I have a PhD. I've been working on the history of the left for a long time. But I also really don't like fascism. And I would really like people to organize against fascism. So, you know, that criticism just sounds like people that haven't read a lot of literature, to be honest. If it wasn't that, they would have honed in on something else. This is not a good faith engagement. This is an effort to take words, take ideas, twist them entirely out of context. I mean, they've compared Antifa to ISIS, for crying out loud. You know, this is not a fair conversation. We need to recognize the rhetorical games being played here and the end purpose of really making protests seem like terrorism, which is, of course, ridiculous. Our country is a history rich with protests of all sorts, and that's what we should be celebrating, not demonizing.
Well, you're in a good country, Spain, to do some research on the Spanish Civil War and another anti-fascist movement. So, Professor Mark Bray, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York. Senator, thanks for being with us.
Reverend, it's good to be with you once again.
Now, we're in day 11 of this government shutdown. Speaker Johnson has said the House will not convene next week. Can you update us on what, if any, progress is being made this weekend in opening the government back up?
Well, look, Rev, the Republicans are feeling the heat. There are 4 reasons, but above all is health care. We have a health care crisis in America, in large part. It was never great to begin with, but in large part caused by what the Republicans have done in their BBB, their so-called big beautiful bill, which is an ugly bill. They're even, Trump said, now let's change the name of the bill. He knows how bad it is. But there's a health care crisis. And look what's happening. People are being kicked out of the nursing homes. Their kids don't know what to do with them. You know, they don't have room in their homes. They don't have health care. Millions are losing health care coverage altogether. Kids who have cancer treatments, those are being cut off. And the ACA tax credits, which was passed under President Obama, they're going through the roof. Listen to this, Reverend. The average family will pay from $900 to $1,000 more a month. How do they afford that in terms of their insurance? And if you're a couple, an elderly couple, 55-year-old couple making $80,000, say $40,000 each a couple, you pay $25,000 more for your health insurance. So working families are sitting around the table. the kitchen table at night and saying, what am I going to do? I can't afford this health insurance, but I need health insurance for my family. And so the Republicans are feeling the heat because they know the American people want the health care crisis fixed. And then adding insult to injury, and that's why there isn't progress this weekend, they're not negotiating. You need to negotiate because you need Democrats and Republicans to pass a bill. When I was majority leader, as you know, we did a lot of good things, but we passed budgets 13 times. But why did we have no shutdowns when I was majority leader? Because bottom line, I sat down with the Republicans and talked. They're not talking. And adding insult to injury, why there's no progress this weekend? Johnson has sent his people home. They haven't been in session for 3 months. 3 weeks, rather. He seems to care more about protecting the Epstein files than protecting America's health care.
His people have not been in for 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Let me raise this to you, Senator. President Trump put out a social media post just hours ago claiming he has directed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to use available funds to pay the troops on Wednesday. This after Republicans blocked a measure in the House just yesterday to make sure they got paid during the shutdown. What's your response to this development, assuming the president actually can do this? Does it change the negotiations at all?
Right. Democrats, look, we want to pay the men and women in our armed forces, and the quickest way to do it would be for Johnson to come back and negotiate a bill that protects Americans' health care, and then everyone, our soldiers, our and armed service people, the people in the air traffic controllers, the guy who works for the federal government and doesn't make much money cleaning up the floors late at night, they'd all get paid. If he sat down and negotiated in good faith and not spent 3 weeks away, we could solve this whole crisis.
Now, the Trump administration has started laying off more than 4,000 federal workers from departments, including health, education, and Social Security. The White House has called its own budget director the Grim Reaper and made it clear it intends to target so-called Democratic programs for cuts. And yet they've tried to criticize you for suggesting a lengthy shutdown may favor Democrats. It sure seems like President Trump is trying to capitalize on this crisis, doesn't it, Senator?
It sure does, and the American people don't like it. Even the government workers, when you talk to them, they resent being used as hostages. They resent being used as pawns by Donald Trump. And it's the kind of thing that Trump does, but the American people don't like it. And the American people, as I said, they want health care. And they want the kinds of things that we Democrats are fighting for to help working families. And when Trump uses these workers as pawns, the American people don't like it, and the workers themselves. I've talked to a whole bunch of them, and so have my colleagues. They resent it as well.
Now, let's switch gears. President Trump will be headed to the Middle East in the next couple of days. UN officials say life-saving aid is flowing into Gaza after Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire. 48 Israeli hostages, 20 alive, and 28 bodies are expected to be released by Monday in exchange for 250 Palestinians. What are your thoughts on what we know about the peace deal so far?
Well, what we know is very good. We have always said we need to do 3 things. I've been pushing for them. 1, bring all the hostages home. And there are a lot of bodies there. We have 2 New Yorkers, Nutra and Atai, we know they're dead, but their families are mourning for their bodies to be home. Jewish law requires a decent burial. So we want the hostages, dead and alive, all to be returned, number 1. Number 2, we certainly want a ceasefire, a long-lasting, strong ceasefire. And third, we need to get aid to the Gazan people who are suffering so under a huge humanitarian crisis. So these are the 3 things that must be done. This is a very, very good strong step in that direction. But there's more to be done, and particularly more to be done to make sure. First, we'll have to make sure all these promises are kept, and people are saying they are. That's good. But second, we got to make sure there's a long-lasting peace in the Middle East, which means 2 states, a Palestinian state and a Jewish state, living side by side in peace. And that's the second part of this. That's a big, big step that could make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a big step. But so far, we all salute what is happening. We hope it continues. But I couldn't help but notice that while the details of the Middle East agreement were being released, Vice President Vance took time out to recycle an old Trump joke about you, calling you a famous Palestinian. Why do you think this administration is so focused on these kind of trolling insults, even in this historic moment?
I think it's just, it's disgraceful how I don't care about me. And, everyone knows who I am and what my views are. I've made them clear over the decades on this issue. In terms of the three things I've mentioned, bring the hostages home, get aid to the Palestinians, and have a real long-term ceasefire. People know my views, and they just troll. They don't believe in trying to negotiate like we're talking about on healthcare. Half the time, 3/4 of the time, instead of directly helping the American people, they put up these memes and they do these videos. And sometimes you wonder, how serious are they about governing and making America better?
This is no joke. Let's talk about Trump's weaponization of the Justice Department. On Thursday, federal prosecutors indicted your and my state's Attorney General Letitia James for alleged mortgage fraud. Criminal charges against former National Secretary John Bolton could come as early as next week. You've said this is what tyranny looks like. Can you explain that?
Yes, they have made the Justice Department, which under every other president, Democrat or Republican, pursued the law and went after people who broke the law. They have made it into Trump's personal attack dog. That is what dictatorships do. That's what tyranny is all about. And they did it with Tish James. She had a legitimate case. She pursued it. She actually won. So Trump is now trying to get back at her. But the case is so weak that even Trump's first prosecutor, who he appointed, said there's not a case here. So he fired that one and put a new prosecutor in who would do whatever he wants. But I talked to Tish James a half hour after the indictment came through. She is strong, she is tough, she is resolute, and she is confident, as am I, that these charges will be rejected because they have no basis in law or in fact. So I respect her. She's my friend. And it's, they're doing something vicious to her.
Now, sticking with Letitia James' indictment for a moment, the New York Times is reporting the property Trump's Justice Department is claiming is an investment property was being occupied by relatives who were not paying rent. Do you think that could be part of the reason why career prosecutors were reluctant to move forward with this case in the first place?
I haven't seen the specific factual affidavits and things like that, but yes, it was absolutely clear that they had no case. And one of them was fired because he wouldn't do it. To his integrity, he said, there's no case here. I'm not going forward. Then they find another one. It is just such a hallmark of tyrannical, autocratic dictatorship societies that they use the prosecutorial department as a political weapon. It is a disgrace, and every American, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, moderate, people should be forcefully rising up against this, speaking out against it, and making it clear how inimical this is to what our democracy has been stood for more than two centuries.
All right, thank you to Democratic Senator Minority Leader, my fellow Brooklynite, Chuck Schumer of New York.
Thank you for the time, Reverend. Appreciate it very much.